Okay, so we're up to lecture number 3 of the Teaching Academic Writing course. Apologies for my voice. I've been a bit fluey, so hopefully you can hear everything fine and I don't sniff too much. Okay, so the focus question for this session is, how do I help my students improve their writing? And we're going to look holistically at the writing process and what it involves, the key aspects of writing, and then give you a pedagogical framework to plan your units around to help students write. So, just want to point out the obvious. Now, this is not always the case. Sometimes we have these amazing students that write way better than us, but you're university educated, you're a writer, you've written many essays before, and so you have intuitive knowledge of the writing process. And a real key to being authentic in your teaching is being willing and open to share this intuitive knowledge and this amazing ability that you have to write with your students. So I want to empower you, no matter what your strengths are. You may not feel like a strong writer. You may feel like you know content knowledge more than you know writing. Be vulnerable, be authentic in your teaching, and demonstrate how you write as best as you can. And don't be afraid to show that you're not yet the perfect writer in the class. Okay, so that's the mindset that I want you to have when we're talking about this. Okay, so we'll start with writing process and writing style. Each individual has a writing process, but we all have different strengths and weaknesses within that writing process. And from a writing process, you have developed a writing style. And your writing style can be improved by focusing on the process leading up to you actually composing and reviewing your text. So, to summarize it in a few ways, your writing process affects writing style, which I've just said. And the way that you think while writing affects the way you write. That is givens. But if you find that yourself or even students are poor writers, then we can have a look at the writing process to be able to assess, identify, and then move kids forward a bit. So there's lots of processes in writing, but here are a few of the key processes that you can focus on in the classroom. The major processes that they use are these 4 processes. So gathering is the process of accessing and organizing. It's finding new information, and if they're writing about a subject, it's being resourceful and gathering the information that they need to be able to write about the subject well. If they're writing a film review, they need to watch the film. So this is the first process in writing. Second is discerning, which is this idea of selecting and deciding, making good choices. It's taking what is gathered and funneling it into the material that actually really matters for the task. 3 is composing. So it's this ability to actually get thoughts and ideas down onto paper into structures that are clear and understandable. And 4 is reviewing. So looking back over what has been composed and making further choices and refining the text even more to make meaning clearer. Now, why do I identify this? Well, each writer has a strength and usually a weakness in their writing process. Some jump to the composition stage without gathering and discerning, which is quite common with students because they're task focused. They want to get this done before the end of the period. Some may be weak with their composition. So the tools that they have, such as their vocabulary, their spelling, their sentence structures are not there, but they are really inquisitive and they do gather quite large amounts of information, but they don't know how to refine it. And so if we focus on the process and the weaknesses and the strengths within the class, we can really hopefully develop writing quite well. I'll put these up on the screen and you can pause it to read through them, but it just defines each of these 4 elements more. Here's discerning. Here's composing. And here's reviewing. The big lesson here is that, the big challenge, I guess, is how much time are we spending on teaching the skills required to write well. There's a lot more to writing than just writing itself. And so it's our responsibility as the best writers in the room to model the writing process with all of our flaws and with all of our strengths, to help our students develop their own writing style through process. Now, the teaching and learning cycle is old school. Through the 80s and 90s, this kind of was adopted within New South Wales schools as the pedagogical framework to develop writing. And so a lot of experienced staff are probably very familiar with it. It's probably been drilled to death. But the main focus is on where we all started in the first lesson, which is field, tenor, and mode, and how to develop writing through building understanding of the field, tenor, and mode. So this approach can be modeled. It's usually not modeled within a classroom. You can't do all four elements within a lesson. But over the course of a few weeks, you may go through this cycle numerous times. You may jump between different ones. You may start with building the field. You may do a joint construction and then jump back to building the field because you found that students don't have the knowledge that they need. And so framing and building our units of work around this cycle is actually quite helpful to model this writing process. So the first is building the field, which is just aiming to build knowledge about the topic that's being written about. The focus in this segment is on content and information. So giving rich opportunities to develop an understanding about the subject. It's the great chance to engage and to hook students into the subject that you're talking about. Usually it's about something that they don't know or they may have prior knowledge about, but more vocabulary needs to be added to their understanding to really understand the subject. It's a mutual process that both teacher and student are involved in building the field knowledge because we all come with our prior understandings and our need to know understandings. A focus, as I mentioned before, on vocabulary is critical. This is the time where we're introducing our new words, our new phrases, our new noun groups, our new everything, because we're looking to form ideas and form understanding so that we can actually write about it. And in this process, we try to model the gather processes. So this may be revolved around research or it may be revolved around comprehension, lots of different avenues to build the field. Hopefully you use many different ways to build the field to foster a bit of engagement. So once we get past the field being built, we want to model the mode or model the genre. And this is aiming to build students' understanding of purpose, of the structure that they're going to be writing in, and the language features of the genre that is being focused on. So we've moved from the subject to explicit conversation about what they are going to create. This segment really focuses on the teacher being explicit. The teacher's understanding of the mode is on display, and you're looking to give exemplar models of writing pieces. You're looking to demonstrate to students what writing in this genre actually looks like. You may spend several lessons talking about the grammatical features of the particular text type that you're going to be modeling. The thought processes while you're writing can be modeled. So if you're writing up a sentence on the board, you might speak out loud and say, why you've chosen to start with this particular noun group, and you're looking to really get your brain kind of out there for the students to pick and refine their own understandings. And you're trying to model the gathering and discerning processes that we mentioned before. 3 comes to a joint construction. You may skip this process if you're working with a class which is very familiar already with the text type, although I'm working on the assumption that you wouldn't give students a writing task if you weren't trying to stretch them in some way. So joint construction is this idea that teachers and students work together to create the text in the form that is desired. So the teacher initiates the writing process and invites them to join in on the teacher's writing. There's a very clear distinction to make, that the focus is on, this is a text that the teacher is creating with assistance from students. It goes without saying, but the joint construction, while it may be on a different aspect of the field, it should use the same field, tenor, and mode as the text that you're going to want them to write in the next process. So if you're talking about responding with a narrative and trying to express a particular emotion through writing a narrative, then you may select a different emotion, or you may prescribe a different emotion to the students, but your text will be basically exactly the same question, exactly the same task as what you're going to get your students to write. Here we're modeling all the processes, but in particular discernment, composition, and review, because through the joint construction, you're going to be refining a student's understanding, going through your own composition and review processes. Finally, we have independent writing. So we're looking here at releasing students to create their own text and demonstrate their own writing process and style. This is where assessment comes in. The support that you give them should be limited, because the support that you've given them has come from the previous 3 aspects of the teaching and learning cycle. You're looking really to create an environment where you can assess how their writing process has been developed through the previous 3 stages. So mistakes are hopefully going to be common, risks are going to be taken, and there should be this idea that peers can be used to refine gathering and discerning in this stage, but the teacher is looking to assess. Now, you may find that this is a failure, or students may not be able to write independently the way that you want them to write, which would require you to go back to a previous stage. You may focus on modeling the mode again, or joint construction, or building the field. Whatever is needed, or whatever you identify in this stage as being lacking, you may, within a unit, never get to this stage, but just feel released, assess rather than continue to direct and scaffold in this stage. Okay, so here's the recap for this lecture. First of all, teachers need to explicitly model and support the entire writing process, not just the beginning stages. The writing process involves gathering, discerning, composing, and reviewing. The teaching and learning cycle begins with building the field. It moves on to modeling the mode. We progress to a joint construction together, and then students demonstrate their understanding through independent writing. Finally, in answer to our inquiry question, how do I help my students improve their writing? We'll start by modeling the writing process. So gather, discern, compose, review. Make sure all of them are included, and make sure you start with yourself and how you do these things. Use this teaching and learning cycle to inform your programming and prepare your students to write well. Finally, create a classroom environment where both teachers and peers can help a student improve an individual's writing process. Don't leave students on their own, but obviously support them and create this feeling of we're doing this together, as opposed to this is what you need to do for me. Here's the bibliography for the entire 3 lecture series. All of them have great things in them, but the bottom reference is particularly useful and gives a whole range of different scaffolds and just activities and things that you can do, and it takes you through the entire writing process that I described in this lecture. So I really highly recommend getting it. It's worthwhile. I use a lot, refer to a lot, but yes, thank you.